When does normal influence cross the line into dark manipulation? When someone deceives to control and creates an imbalanced relationship where they win and you lose. Dark manipulation tactics are used by individuals with personality traits known as the dark triad: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. When you see dark manipulation used to deceive, control, and steal from you, it's time to move on or at least protect yourself. Be sure to stick around for number 10, as it might be the worst of them all. Let's unwrap these 10 dark manipulation tactics. Dark manipulation tactic 1: gaslighting. This is when the manipulator tries to make someone doubt their reality or memory to gain power over them. It's weird when it happens to you. You saw something that didn't sit right, and now you're in the conversation with the manipulation. And they deny it. I don't know what you're talking about. You press them because you know they did. So they diminish. Oh, well, it's not a big deal. You're overreacting. So you make a case that it is a big deal. Then they divert your attention either by giving you a word salad that leaves you confused, or by counter-accusing you, or they blame someone else, or they lie. It's a confusing experience to try to get the truth out of them. You won't. The whole purpose of gaslighting is to confuse you so you can't hold them accountable. With gaslighting, watch for the 4 Ds and a C: deny, diminish, deceive, defer, blame shift, and confuse. They won't take responsibility, but if they do or look like they are, it's just more BS. With one gaslighter, she finally admitted to kind of being part of the problem. Then a few days later came a rage I had never seen from her. What's going on? A counselor helped me understand that the intense backlash, exploding or seemingly minor issues, was a direct result of me pushing for responsibility. I noticed with this narcissist that she would explode, then try to re-recruit me back to the relationship. Kind of like the good cop and bad cop was in one person. When you see gaslighting in any form, it's time to move on. But if you find it difficult to leave, you need to heal the trauma bond. Check out this video for more on how to see and heal trauma bonds. Dark manipulation tactic 2: triangulation. What is triangulation? Think of 3: you, them, and a third person used to create rivalry, leverage, or jealousy. Does someone leverage a pastor, counselor, friend, or family member during a conflict to bolster their influence? The third person may claim to just be concerned about you and your partner, but if the goal seems to be to do the bidding of the manipulator, it's triangulation. My wife and I were having problems when I got a call from a friend. It was out of the blue, but he wasted no time lecturing me on religious beliefs that boiled down to staying in a bad relationship. I finally got him to admit that my spouse called him because she knew I respected him. He had no interest in my reasons for ending the relationship. He was no friend. When you sense that you're in a triangulation situation, call it out. I feel like you're recruiting others to try to control me. Sometimes, calling it out will help the manipulator see that the tactic isn't working, and they'll back off, or it's time for you to move on. Let's move on to dark influence tactic number 3. Dark manipulation tactic 3: love bombing. This is when you are overwhelmed with affection and attention when you're being recruited to an organization or when you're preparing to leave a relationship. For example, I had a number of concerns with the truth claims of a toxic religion. Suddenly, I experienced an outpouring of fellowship from the local congregation. Oh, it felt good to be noticed and loved, but I also knew it was fake and manipulative. Because I had studied dark manipulation, I saw through it. I thanked them for their love and let them know it didn't change the facts that disproved their religious claims. It was all very awkward, but knowledge was power. Or when you move to a new neighborhood and get cookies and a lot of attention, great. But will it last when you're not interested in their religion, club, or business opportunity? That's when you see love bombing for what it is. A fake friendship gesture meant to oblige you to do something you wouldn't rationally do otherwise. Let's move to the next dark influence tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 4. Backhanded compliments. Yes, this is what your mother-in-law and other manipulators do when they want to insult you, but sugarcoat it so they don't look like a jerk. You don't sweat much for a fat person. Thanks? If you sense that someone is disrespecting you, they probably are. Highly critical people can't seem to help themselves. And what better opportunity to insult you by wrapping it into something that sounds somewhat complimentary? When people show you who they are, believe them. Remember, I'm not talking about legitimate feedback that might feel harsh but is accurate. We need factual feedback even when it might come across as harsh. But backhanded compliments are a horse of a different color. Respect yourself enough to cut out of your life anyone who disrespects you. Dark manipulation tactic 5, the silent treatment. You see the silent treatment when someone withholds communication to punish or control someone. Sometimes, silence in a relationship is needed. People need time to regroup, to think, to sort things out. If this is you, let your partner know what's going on so they can give you the space you need. But if silence is a control tactic, it's nothing but a dark manipulation tactic. A friend's wife had not spoken to him for 2 weeks after she spent a significant amount of money on something she hadn't discussed with him. They agreed to discuss purchases that weren't in their budget, especially ones that were thousands of dollars. When he became aware of the purchase, he was curious and needed to understand why she would make that decision. Next came gaslighting. His training didn't throw him off. He didn't get angry, but insisted on knowing why she would do that when they had otherwise agreed. She left in a huff and refused to speak to him. For weeks. When she finally did speak, she accused him of being the controlling one, a form of projection we'll discuss later in this video. As I told my friend, this kind of control is at best narcissistic and a sign this isn't going to get better. Time to move on. That brings us to the next tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 6, guilt tripping. Guilt can be healthy. Let's look at healthy guilt versus toxic guilt. When you get feedback about an unskillful behavior, it's a gift that signals change. Own it, commit to change, and make it happen through repeated intentional action. Healthy guilt is never meant to be personally defining, pervasive, or permanent. But unhealthy guilt or guilt tripping tries to do exactly that. Label you in the worst possible way so you feel bad about yourself so they more easily control you. Yes, they want you to feel guilty about something, but they do so in a way that tries to make it permanent, personally defining, and pervasive. The weight of toxic guilt makes you easier to control. Do you see the difference between healthy feedback and guilt tripping? Here's a quick example. I bought some things from a business but stopped because their quality started to diminish. I didn't leave a negative review, I just stopped using them. No big deal until one day, I ran into the business owner at a community event. She was not happy with me. I asked her if I had done something wrong. She said, "My family suffers when my business struggles, and people like you don't seem to understand that. People like me? Oh, you wouldn't understand," as she stormed off. Weird. Let's unwrap what she said. "My family suffers when my business struggles" is an attempt at a guilt trip through pity. "You wouldn't understand" is a clear insult and meant to paint me as permanently bad. I shrugged and went on my way. I got feedback from mutual friends that she had smeared me, but honestly, I had no interest in putting another ounce of energy into this weird situation. Speaking of weird situations, let's unwrap the next dark manipulation tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 7, hoovering. I have been bitten by this tactic so many times. What is hoovering? It's a simple let's talk, or let's at least not be enemies after a breakup.
Oh, it's so subtle, and if you're like me, you'll miss it the first few times it happens. You've left the relationship and closed the door, smart. Later you get a text, a call, or an email meant to re-establish contact somehow.
It seems so innocent, even healthy, but it's not. It's meant to pull you back in. That's why they call it hoovering. These messages are often laced with honey, but sometimes can be very vitriolic. The point is they're trying to re-establish contact with you. Any way they can. Oh, I just want to apologize. Sounds innocent. Wow, finally. So you see them. And it's not much of an apology, but you let them back in your life. Soon, the abuse starts up again. So, again, you go no contact as the cycle starts again. Rinse and repeat. You can bet that another message will arrive asking if we can be friends again. When they try to re-establish contact, don't do it. For your own sanity. Because you're an empathetic person, this won't feel natural, but it's best to cut them off and leave it at that. Let's move on to the next dark manipulation tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 8, flying monkeys. Like triangulation, flying monkeys use others to do one's bidding through lies or deceit. What is the difference? Scale triangulation usually involves another person, while flying monkeys can be entire religious congregations. Think with flying monkeys. Think swarm. With triangulation, it's usually a person such as a co-opted mental health counselor who is doing the manipulator's bidding. When the flying monkeys are your family, friends, people you thought loved you, it's disheartening. Flying monkeys fall into 3 groups: the innocent or naive, open to persuasion, and the deeply co-opted. With the first 2, a little patience and understanding go a long way to helping them wake up and take in new information that will bring them back to support you. But with deeply co-opted, they swallowed the lies hook, line, and sinker, and you've lost them. Use your energy wisely and let the deeply co-opted live their life apart from you. Here's a good video on reclaiming your life from a smear campaign. Check it out. Let's move to the next manipulation tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 9, the bait and switch. A bait and switch presents a promising situation and then substitutes it with a less desirable one. This is a signature move, a calling card for manipulators, narcissists, and other toxic people. 2 days after marrying someone I thought I could trust, she was so different I didn't recognize her. She was punking me about the silliest things. A bath mat she had used for months suddenly became unacceptable, and I had to replace it within 24 hours, and many other things to let me know. A new sheriff was in town. When I gathered myself, I asked her, "Who are you? I mean, seriously, who are you?" She smiled and said, "Your wife, dumbass." Let's say this relationship didn't last long, but who pulls a stunt like this? We passed a commitment stage, marriage, and suddenly she's the control freak from hell. Weird. And unhealthy, to say the least. The bait and switch shows up in many transactional relationships based on manipulation. The list could go on, but the bottom line is when you see that you took the bait and are now seeing the switch, know that you've been manipulated and plot your exit. That brings us to the final tactic. Dark manipulation tactic 10, projection. This one can be hard to spot. Projection is accusing others of one's own negative traits or behaviors. When you're being accused of something with little or no evidence, this might be projection. I was seeing a counselor when my covert narcissistic partner started to accuse me of infidelity. Huh? What are you talking about? All she could point to was me mentioning a conversation with a female coworker. This made no sense until I unwrapped this with a narcissist-savvy counselor. Oh, she's projecting. She's having an affair. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Once I got educated about what it is, why toxic people do this to other people, I started to investigate. I'm not proud to admit that I hacked her emails and looked at her phone, but there it was, in plain sight, the affair. I learned to listen closely to her accusations because she was telling me no, confessing to me what she was really doing. Oh, I'm hiding money in secret accounts? Thank you for telling me what you're doing. Everything she accused me of, she was doing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't some insecure person dealing with fears, but every accusation was a confession. So, listen closely to what the narcissist accuses you of. And protect yourself when you see who you're really dealing with. You need to protect yourself when you see any of these 10 dark manipulation tactics. When people show you who they are, believe them. Thanks for joining us today at the Change Capability Institute.